of and uses the name Yeshua, Jesus, or Yahshua in a reference to somebody who would come on to the, be born, and in prophecy, in other words, that would be born in the fourth kingdom of man, and be born and come on the scene and minister in the beginning of the fourth kingdom, would die, be resurrected, and be brought back again at the end of the fourth kingdom. I've been reading this book now for 35 years, and Genesis through Malachi, and I've never seen a prophecy that says that a person of this nature would come on the scene at the beginning of the fourth kingdom and at the end of the fourth kingdom. I haven't seen that prophecy. Now, if any of you out there have seen that prophecy, then get in contact with us and let me know where that is, and let us know here at Yhwh Our Righteousness, because we haven't seen that. All right, so what is that? That's a mythical character. Now, it was prophesied of in the book of remembrance, like we've spoken of before on previous shows, in chapter 11, Daniel, starting at verse 36, which is a vision, a new vision there, which the introduction was taken away. And when you get into it, it starts talking about Augustus Caesar. He was that king that magnified himself in this fourth kingdom above all. Okay, he's spoken of also in the chapter 7 Daniel as that little horn that would pop up on the head of that fourth beast that already had 10 horns on it. All right, in the head of it, and that's the fourth kingdom of man. Many people call that the Roman kingdom, but it doesn't say that in the book of remembrance, the so-called Old Testament. It only calls it the fourth kingdom. And also in chapter 7, it refers to it as being diverse. That word is used 3 times in chapter 7 Daniel, and it's very vital, and it's very pertinent why that term was used, because it's talking about this fourth kingdom was going to be different from the previous 3 kingdoms. Okay, and this fourth kingdom was going to go through changes. All right, and when that kingdom opens up, you had 10 horns on its head, and all those horns were not Romans. All right, 3 of them were, and of that 3, those 3 was Mark Antony, Lepidus, and Caesarion, who was Roman because he was the son of Julius Caesar and the 12th Cleopatra. All right. But those other 7 horns weren't Roman. Those were various other nations. And that's your fourth kingdom as it comes on the scene. There was no one power ruling this fourth kingdom from the outset. Now, Rome was on the rise, okay? And eventually Rome became the preeminent nation in this fourth kingdom, shortly thereafter from its outset. And that happened under Augustus Caesar Octavianus at the Battle of Actium in 31 BCE, when he defeated Cleopatra, 12th Cleopatra, and Mark Antony and Caesarion. Caesarion was killed. He was the true heir to Julius Caesar. And Mark Antony committed suicide. And Octavianus had already gotten rid of Lepidus. Those 3 horns, removed by the roots. All right? And then he is the king that exalted himself. He is the king that under him laws and times were changed. Okay. Now, when you read this chapter 11, Daniel, starting at verse 36, it's talking about the fourth kingdom. It's progressive, and as you read through it, it goes from Augustus Caesar, the little horn, who magnified himself above all. Okay. He introduced celibacy with the Vestal virgins. Okay. This has carried on all the way through to today. Okay, with your nuns in Catholicism. Okay, when you go down a little further in chapter 11, Daniel, there around verse 37, 38, it's going to tell you about how a king will acknowledge this strange God that would be uplifted, magnified, and honored with silver and gold and precious stones. Well, this strange God became known as Jesus, or Yeshua, or Yahshua, of the good spell, or the Gospels, the New Testament. Okay, and this religion was put upon the people of the world. Okay, that's the history of it, and it was taken throughout the earth and put upon the people, and it grew and grew and grew. And this was something new. Again, when you go back in chapter 32, Deuteronomy, Yah spoke through Moses of these new gods that would be newly raised up. Okay? And we would eventually go off into these new gods, new idols, newly raised up. Because they're not good, which is what God means. They're only idols and images, concepts of men. Okay? And you go on through chapter 11, it says in verse 38, but in his stronghold he would honor the God of forces. Now, this is what people, these nations and these ruling nations and the rulers of the world, this is what they put their faith in. They put their faith in weaponry. That's the top and bottom line with them. Okay? First thing they're going to try to do is con you, confuse you, deceive you, to manipulate you, as many in the world through idolatry, whether it's Judaism, which is a form of idolatry. Okay? It's idolatry. It's, like I said a little earlier, it was introduced by the descendants of Esau. Okay? When they came into the land, eventually in the land of Israel, in 586 BCE, and that's when they came in at the swelling of Jordan. Okay? Like a lion, from the swelling of Jordan, they came up to the habitation of the strong. They came up with Nebuchadnezzar. And as it says in Ezekiel chapter 7, was that verse 24, Yah said he would bring the worst of the heathen to possess the houses of Israel. Okay? And they've been in the land ever since, basically until they were kicked out by the Romans in 135 CE AD. We talked about this on a previous show. Okay? And when they came in, that's when, even before that, okay, when you go into Kings and Chronicles, it tells you that when Yehuda, Jerusalem, and Israel started to go into captivity, started to go into idolatry, should I say, and started to be taken off into captivity, and even before we were actually taken into captivity, that the descendants of Esau started to, they got the dominion over us. They broke our dominion over them, and they started to get the dominion, okay, unto this day. All right? And this was prophesied in Genesis chapter 27. Okay? It's spoken of there. You can go back and read it, where Isaac, when he put the blessing on Esau, he told him that he was going to have the fatness of the earth and the dew of heaven also, but he would live by his sword. And it would come a time when he would break the yoke of his brother, okay, Jacob, whose name was changed to Yisrael, off his neck. And he would get the dominion. And that's when our forefathers, the descendants of Israel, the so-called African American, and again, you know, I'm not going to go through all of them I spoke on before. We're all over the earth. We're to the four corners of the earth, okay, in captivity. The tail, not the head. The tail, not the head. And this is very important here, because again, when you study this book, so-called Old Testament, the book of remembrance, it talks about Israel would go into captivity because we would go into idolatry, and we would be kicked out of the land and scattered to the four corners of the earth. And this is Deuteronomy 28, 64, 65th verse, as we've spoken of before, and those verses before it, from the 15th verse all the way through 67. The 68th verse already been fulfilled. We were taken out of Egypt and taken back into Egypt in 320 BCE. We've spoken on that before. But the point being is that we were to inherit this curse. We were to be cut off from Yah. We were not to remember that we were Israel. Okay? When we were to be scattered into these nations. Eventually, the understanding that we were Israel was to be taken out of us. We were to lose that understanding. When you get you a Strong's Exhaustive Concordance of the Bible and look up the word remember, and you go into these places, you'll see whereas many places where we were not to remember who we are and who we were, who we descended from.